Will Chai ever become best friends with Mario? We're talking the Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase and more in this episode of Gaming Insight. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Gaming Insight with me, Steve Saylor, the weekly podcast where I and a special guest talk about the biggest gaming news of the week for about 30-ish minutes. And today's special guest is none other than Kinda Funny co-founder and 30 under 30, Tim Gettys. What's up, Tim?
Steve, thank you so much for having me on this. I'm so excited to talk about a lot of things, but specifically Nintendo, one of my passions in life, and hanging out with good friends talking about video games. Always a fun time. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. This is episode 2, so, I'm hitting with the big guns already.
Let's go.
Tim, so.
Well, wow, what an honor.
This is great. Now, before we get into the story, of course, I want to be able to let folks know that if you like this show and want to support me, you can go to patreon.com/Steve Saylor, where paid members get this podcast a day early, and also a daily morning podcast with me, where I talk about the daily gaming news and accessibility news and so much more. All right, Tim, let's talk Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase. I actually have not heard your thoughts on it. What were your thoughts about the games that were announced and what Nintendo put out there?
I absolutely loved this. I feel like this is pretty much as good as a Nintendo Partner Showcase is going to be. We've seen a lot of these in the past. And, when you look at Nintendo, the entire history since Direct started, they can be very hit or miss. And there's the ones that have the lofty expectations. There's the ones that have pretty near the ground expectations. No matter what, though, before it happens, we're at lofty. Everyone's coming and expecting the moon and back. And I understand why, because unlike a lot of other showcases, Nintendo has proven in the past they can bring the hype. They can deliver in a way that's like, oh, wow, that's what an S tier showcase looks like. And that just makes, showcases that are maybe, D tier look even worse, but even B tier, sometimes A tier, maybe aren't like, oh, well, where's this and where's that? Like the bigger heavy hitters. But with the partner showcase, I feel like the expectations are always set correctly, where you're like, oh, don't expect much from this. Like, this is going to be third party obligations. This is going to be marketing agreements. This is going to be that type of stuff. And for this being the 7th year of the Switch's life, and pretty much in the twilight years of the system, whether it's this year or next year, for this to be a partner showcase coming out in 2024 with this many fun, exciting games that were legit surprises or things that we've expected but are finally getting confirmed, I think this was a pretty big win.
So how would you rate it on either, let's say, the Kinda Funny scale or on the letter scale of showcases or at least Nintendo Directs that you've seen in the past?
Oh man, see that gets really hard, because I feel like it's the context is necessary there. Where did this achieve its goal? And in that sense, I think it deserves an A. Like, I think that it deserves it really did what it set out to do. They had clear expectations set. They let us know how long it was going to be. It was games coming out in this time frame, and all of that stuff they committed to. And again, there's legit surprises here. I don't think that there's any single game here that's like oh man, like the reaction videos are going to be crazy, but I think it's more like, oh, there was a ton of games. There are 20 games or so. And we need to remember that a lot of these game announcements are things that get leaked or teased. So it doesn't feel that exciting when they're finally announced, but we got Grounded coming to Switch. We got some Xbox games coming to Switch, which I know we kind of already knew, but let's imagine that all the Xbox stuff didn't happen. It was going to be announced here. That's pretty exciting, right? And then on top of that, things like Epic Mickey coming back, that is such a perfect example to me of a game that I'm like, yeah, I want to see that game come back. The game was good. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. And it getting another chance at life, I think, is great. The shadow drop or announcement of it's out today of Penny's Big Breakaway, that is a win. That game I am so excited for. I've heard nothing but good things. I played about an hour of it and I am obsessed. So it dropping like that yesterday, a legit surprise and a really exciting one when we get to just play it now.
So were there any other games that kind of popped off for you? Because I did see you tweet about Pennies. I wouldn't actually. I was like, I didn't know anything about it until I think it was either you or Blessing that said it was from the Sonic Mania team, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I think I might need to check this out.
It's a lot of people that used to work on the Sonic Mania team, including the people that worked on the soundtrack, T-Lopes, who I'm a huge fan of. So the vibes are right for sure, but it feels really special, man. Like to put this game on, and I haven't beat it. Like I'm still pretty early in it, but it is a impeccably designed platformer, 3D platformer that is a little difficult to wrap your head around because it doesn't exactly play like most 3D platformers do. The right stick doesn't control the camera. The camera's fixed, but once you just kind of give up the impulse to like need to control the camera at all times and just understand they're showing you exactly what you need to see, and they're kind of guiding you in levels that have the design of a Mario Galaxy or a Mario 3D World, where they're more linear, but they're kind of just taking you through the set of obstacles. But it's very Sonic-like in that it's momentum based, and you use your yo-yo. So the right stick controls your yo-yo to either spin around and hit enemies or get on top of and roll down half pipes. Like, it's kind of a Tim Gettys dream game. Like I just mentioned Mario Galaxy and Mario 3D World level design. Like it doesn't get much higher praise than that, right? But you add on some Tony Hawk elements, some Sonic the Hedgehog elements, just the good ones. Oh man, we have a winner on our hands.
This does sound like a very Tim-ass game. I love that. Mm-hmm. So let's definitely talk about like Nintendo as a whole. I mean, we're definitely coming up on what seems to be like at like all point, like things are pointing to this being in the last year of the Switch, and looking forward to the Switch 2. How are you thinking about this last year? I mean, I think I've heard you mention before about sort of like the last horseman as far as the big games for Nintendo.
Horsemen, yeah.
Even with this week, or sort of the potential of Metroid Prime 4 saying that it might actually come out this year. What are your thoughts about like what is like Nintendo swan song of a year for the Nintendo Switch?
I mean, honestly, I'm endlessly impressed, and like I know that a lot of people can hear me talk about Nintendo's last 2 years, like what this all looks like, and be like, wow, how could you possibly be excited about this? And the answer is there's a ton of high quality games coming out that are focused on hitting specific audiences that they're gonna resonate with. They have a proven track record now of years of delivering, and I'm just so impressed that they're able to put out this many games still this far into the Switch's life cycle. And I understand a lot of ports, I understand a lot of sequels, a lot of this or that. There's a lot of other things too, and not to say any of those things are bad. Like we're talking about some of the best games ever made, and some games that were just overlooked or not given a real shot. And as a lifelong Nintendo fan, I was, a young kid growing up with the Super Nintendo, NES, N64, like that, all those. But even GameCube, I would argue I was young enough to just kind of let happen to me, where it was just exciting to be playing games. But the Wii and then the Wii U and the DS and 3DS, there was some major wins there for sure. But in terms of a steady cadence of releases that was keeping me engaged and keeping me picking the system up, and a steady cadence of announcements to keep me excited for what I'm about to play next, we have never had it better. And what they've pulled off with the Switch generation from beginning to now it's incredible. And that's why I can look at this lineup and yeah, sure, it doesn't have Metroid Prime, it doesn't have like the next 3D Mario or the next this or the next that or some new IP or whatever, but it does have a lot of really, really, really great looking games. And that's in addition to things that we know are coming, like Super Princess Peach, which is great, new IP. Let's try something a little bit different. And I love when Nintendo gets that type of weird. Like that results in things like Luigi's Mansion, which is amazing, and another franchise that has found success before, but it wasn't until the Switch that Luigi's Mansion 3 is like, oh, this is a over 10 million selling game. Wow.
Yeah, that's the thing I kind of noticed with, I mean, a lot of like sort of end of cycle generations for consoles. I've generally seen a lot of kind of like, okay, now we're getting the games that are literally kind of showing off all the capabilities of what the console can be able to do. And I think that like, because we've had like, I just one great example is basically The Last of Us, obviously with the PS3 going into the PS4. Like that was kind of like the best of the PS3, but then like it almost was like it would get a PS4 game, but just designed for the PS3 in a sense. And so, but I kind of look at the Nintendo Switch as kind of like I don't know. I want to know your thoughts as sort of like, is there like a particular game that either is not really talked about as sort of like really showing off the capabilities of what the Switch can do now? Not like sort of like what the potential of what the Switch can do for like the Switch 2, but like what it can be able to do now. The first one that comes to mind would be obviously Tears of the Kingdom, but I was wondering if there was any other game that you could think of that like is like, no, like at the end of this cycle generation, this is sort of the game that would like, you want to see what the Switch can do, this is it.
I mean, look, Nintendo's always done things differently, and I think that
Nintendo.
Yeah, and for better or worse, for sure. But looking at what you're talking about the end of life, like here's the big game. PS2 had God of War 2. You know, you mentioned Last of Us. Like we've seen this now a couple times. Last of Us 2 on PS4, right? Same exact idea. So while those systems had that Sony is pushing the tech, I feel like that's because developers needed the time to learn the system and figure out how to really push it and get all of the whatever those big next gen features were out of the system. Nintendo isn't that way. Nintendo has always, not always, but in recent generations been more, hey, we have a gimmick. We're not pushing for power. We're pushing for this gimmick. And here's why that gimmick is fun. Here's why it's going to work. And that's why you look at the Wii, and it succeeded because out the gate, they had Wii Sports, which was a perfect pitch of why the gimmick works. But then you also had Twilight Princess, which was, hey, but for the more core gamer, here's a good implementation of that gimmick in something that we know you're going to love. And remember, that was cross-gen as well, but the gimmick enhanced it. It made it the version that people wanted. A lot of people were like, I don't, but like it worked for the Wii. Jump into the Switch. The gimmick is it's a console. There's no longer a split library between 3DS and Wii U. Nintendo's putting all their effort into one thing that is a console and a handheld. And from day one, that gimmick worked and it hasn't stopped working. So I don't really see it as like, oh, Nintendo was building to some like bigger moment than what came before, because they launched with Breath of the Wild, also on Wii U, but launched on Breath of the Wild, eventually got Tears of the Kingdom. In between that, we got Mario Odyssey. We got like so many of these big games. And it's like, I don't think that you look at, I mean, in a lot of ways, yes, but in a lot of ways, you look at Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and it's not like, oh, wow, Nintendo needed to get through the entire Switch life cycle to get to this point. From using the tech perspective, I think that's more just game design and more like the creativity that those Nintendo devs have. All that to say, you look at the Wii U and its critical failure was that its gimmick never had a selling point. It never had a Wii Sports. It never had even here's Twilight Princess, but the better way to play. It was like, here's Nintendo Land, fun game. I love Nintendo Land, but it never got past gimmick. That was a fun weekend with friends, but that wasn't a reason that the Wii U had to be. And we never got that. But that's why with the Switch, I feel like we've gotten these games the entire time to prove the use case of pushing the Switch. And if there's anything we don't need is the Switch to be pushed anymore.
That's true. Yeah. Because I was kind of thinking about it. Like, I mean, before we got the partner showcase, I think people were kind of like considering, okay, when is Nintendo going to officially announce this long rumored Switch 2? Whether it was going to be like right now or potentially in March or a little bit later down the road. And now we kind of got the delay of it potentially being in like be coming out in 2025 instead of this year. I started to kind of think about, like kind of the legacy of the Switch. And yeah, there's definitely there. But I think in a sense, like Zelda kind of was sort of that. Like it was the tentpole of the beginning and then sort of the end of the Switch generation. We had Breath of the Wild showcasing all of what the Switch can do. Sure, yeah, you're right. I think it was sort of like it had obviously had to be able to work on the Wii U, but it had that sort of like, oh, this is what we can be able to do with the Switch, and then. Go into like Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like that they were able to like, okay, now we know the system. It's now just for the Switch. Now we can be able to improve on what we created and literally create two separate maps, almost like one on top of the other. That it kind of in a way proved like everyone was saying like, oh no, Switch hardware can't handle anything anymore. Like, what can you be able to do? And then Nintendo's like, yeah, no, we got this, and it just worked. And it was kind of interesting to kind of see. Like all like kind of just the entire history, but I wanted to like ask you, when do you think like we're like, I know that this is just the $1 million question of when do you think we're going to finally be able to hear more about the Switch 2? As sort of in my mind, the de facto sort of like Nintendo expert, what do you see the timeline of of when this is gonna, like, when we're gonna finally be able to see and then potentially have our hands on the Switch 2?
I mean, I think we're in a clearly shifting landscape where I think the answer to that question is probably not even locked down. And I do think that things have changed where I was fairly convinced. I mean, I was convinced we were getting it in 2024. I still kind of somewhere inside me feel like we still might. But
Same.
In the last week, the amount of reports from people that I trust that are saying things are delayed, things are shifting, third parties are talking about being told, hey, the launch is going to be next year. I'm starting to buy it. And I'm only disappointed because I always want to play new, exciting Nintendo games. Like, that's it. I think the most important thing is for them to get this right. Like, they need to keep the momentum that the Switch had. And if that means waiting so that they have the right, not just launch lineup, but like follow-up lineup, because that's what worked for the Switch. The year one of the Switch had a big game essentially every month, whether that was a port like Mario Kart or a new IP like ARMS. And obviously I don't need to bring up Zelda and Mario, but even in between, they had smaller titles that were still of consequence, right? That were coming out there, and they need to do that again. And I think they're kind of set up to do that. I think they're in a great place because we have a lot of question marks around what a lot of the big heavy hitting Nintendo devs have been working on. Like, what is the 3D Mario team working on? They did Bowser's Fury, the very small project added on to 3D World. That was the last thing we heard from them. That was years ago at this point. The Mario Kart team, they worked on ARMS, but that was essentially like a launch window title. They ported the game, and then they've been doing all of the DLC for Mario Kart 8 over the last like 2 years. But even looking at what that is, there was a couple new courses altogether, but most of it was just enhanced versions of existing things, which so much work has to go into that. And they did an amazing job. I love that DLC. But you compare the DLC to the proper in-game levels, there wasn't as much love put into them. So it gets me thinking, what have they been working on? What is the Mario Kart team working on? And I mean, the answer is probably Mario Kart. But my point is, I think we're ready for, not just we're ready, the audience is ready, but the devs are ready to produce a 3D Mario, a Mario Kart, an Animal Crossing, like go down the line of repeat what the Switch did, but just do it again. And that's something that Nintendo has struggled with generation to generation. I don't think they've ever been in this position where you look at N64, GameCube, Wii U, the major franchises never had back-to-back, oh, they were all on this console and then they were all on that one. Like N64 just didn't have a Metroid game, just period. Wii U didn't have a Metroid game, right? Then you look at the Switch, it has every franchise. I think the only major Nintendo franchise that didn't have a unique entry on Switch was Donkey Kong. And that is kind of surprising, honestly. But they did have the port of Tropical Freeze, one of the best 2D platformers of all time. But they didn't have, there was no core Donkey Kong 2D or 3D game, which I do find pretty interesting. I'm rambling now, but I hope that there's a point that I'm making. I forgot what you even asked.
No, because I was going to say, like, you're right. I think because, I mean, Nintendo's kind of been like the one sort of like out of the big three consoles, like they kind of have this, like, every console is always different. Like there's always something different, whether it's the controller or the you know, advancements and whatever, like you said, gimmicks before, but it's like they never really had a consistent sort of lineup that would transfer pretty easily from one to the other than potentially like the Wii U into the Switch. And now we're kind of looking at the Switch 2 potentially, like with the rumors of that being this relatively the same. Like we haven't heard, like, other than just sort of upgraded everything. I mean, we don't know what new sort of thing is, you know, again, Nintendo's going to Nintendo, and they may just add one extra gimmick in there that we did not know about. But do you think that we're going to see like basically just an iteration, not a complete revolution of a Nintendo console?
Yeah, revolution. I like what you did there. No, I Nintendo's going to Nintendo. So I've said this many times, but trying to find a pattern with Nintendo is a fool's errand. Like they do what they want when they want to do it. Having said all that, the Switch has found a success for them on both the hardware and software side that it's just simply unrivaled. I don't know why they would want to risk this. They've seen what Risk has done before in a negative way of following up consoles with things like the Wii U. But even looking at things like the 3DS compared to the DS had astronomical success. So to think that you're going to repeat that it's wild. So no shame on them. But the 3DS, I do think, was an example of a gimmick that I don't think necessarily got in the way of it, because I don't think that, like, the 3D at the end of the day, they stopped. Like Pokemon Sun and Moon came out on the 3DS and just didn't have 3D. So it's like, for all intents and purposes, it was the DS2. But my money is that it is going to be the Switch 2. I think that they're going to want to continue the success of the Switch. It is just going to be what that means to people, which is just a better Switch. I feel like that is the most I gotta have it type marketing argument, because what does that mean? You're going to get a sequel lineup to all those banger games that you played in 2017, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Like, they've done this. They just need to do it again. And I think that they'll get all those people back and probably more.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So okay, so now
Maybe
jumping into the exactly.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Now jumping into sort of the other sort of big kind of thing about this showcase was obviously this is the first time now we're seeing like what of the 4 games that Xbox was saying was going multi-platform is now, you know, we have a lot more information about that and what the 4 games are and what platforms they're going on. I talked with MC Fixer last week about everything that happened with Xbox, but I want to know your thoughts on it, because I would have bet I would have went to Vegas and I would have bet money that Hi-Fi Rush was going to be in this showcase, and yet we got Grounded and Pentiment, both Obsidian games and both great games in of itself. But I would have bet a lot of money on Hi-Fi Rush being in this showcase. What are your thoughts on the games that were announced for Switch from Xbox, and what wasn't announced for Switch on Xbox?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I don't know that I would have bet everything on it. Like, I'd still I would have expected it. Let me say that. I feel like Pentiment and Grounded I thought were for sure things. And I would say that I probably also thought Hi-Fi Rush was a for sure thing too. And I am a little surprised that it's not there, to the point that I feel like there must just be something else at play, in the same way that when Xbox were essentially, let me say this straight, when they were forced to come forth and be like, hey, here's where we're at, here's what's happening, but it's like, hey, there's 4 games, we can't actually say what they are, and it's like, we're all like, why can't you, why'd you even do this? And it's because their hand was forced. Like, they had to talk, but they couldn't say certain things, and clearly we now know one of those things was, it was a marketing agreement that Nintendo was going to own these announcements, and then on the same side, PlayStation seemed to own the Hi-Fi Rush announcement. The fact that the Switch version of that game is not announced there, I find very weird. Even at this point, I'm willing to bet it's coming to Switch. I just don't understand why we don't know that yet. But there is also a world where it's just not, for some reason, whether it just can't run or whether there's some other problems. I don't know, but I am surprised that it wasn't announced as part of this.
Yeah, it's actually so, like, even just before this, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, Insider Gaming literally kind of just put out that apparently that they might be holding off for the Switch 2. I don't know how much credence there is to that, because they do say that just all they say is sources say, but they don't really kind of give a lot more other than it's just they might be holding it back for like Hi-Fi Rush for the Switch 2. So it's weird. It was kind of weird just seeing it. I'm like, oh wait, where's Hi-Fi Rush? And then it got PS5. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know, man. The moment you start talking Switch 2, I feel like it is a lot of theorizing, which is fun.
Yes.
And that makes sense. But I feel like we just don't have enough answers yet. Like, even going back to you asking me, like, when do I think the Switch is coming? It's like, everything is shifting and changing. But like, the question I actually care about more is what's up with Metroid Prime 4, because I'm really interested in, and this actually kind of ties back a couple of questions you've asked today, but like, is Metroid Prime 4 the Switch swan song game? Like, is that the big final moment for the Switch? Is it also the crossover debut of the Switch 2. Like, is it a cross game, or is it a cross-gen game, or is it just a Switch game, or just a Switch 2 game? I don't really mind one way or the other or anything. Like, I want Metroid to be played by as many people as possible. I love that franchise, and I feel like they're gonna really put their all into Prime 4 because they have to. But Dread was incredible, and I would rather Dread be on as many consoles as possible for people to be able to play, because Metroid is traditionally not a high seller. And not just traditionally, it's never been a high selling franchise. And guess what else wasn't the most megaton sales franchise of all time? Zelda. Until
very true.
The Switch. And like, again, it still sold millions, but it didn't sell 20 million. Like, Breath of the Wild, the combination of that game being as good as it was, reinventing Zelda and introducing Zelda in a new way to audiences, despite there being a Zelda essentially annually for decades, combined with the Switch working as well as it did, made Zelda a much more popular franchise. And I feel like Metroid has to be capable of that to some extent. Like, maybe not to the degree of Zelda, but Metroid's cool, man. Samus is cool. Like, I feel like there's definitely, and Metroid Prime is also one of the best games of all time. So, as well as Super Metroid and many Metroids. So I feel like whatever Nintendo can do to give Metroid the best chance of success, that's what I want to see. And I personally, at this point, don't know what of those options that answer is.
Because as you were saying, I was just kind of thinking about it, and you would be, I think the person who would know this. Has Nintendo ever had a holiday season where they didn't have at least a game going into holidays that this is the Switch game to be able to get? Because
the Switch game, now, I thought we were saying has Nintendo ever. I was like, oh, Steve, let me introduce you to the Wii U era. Like, even the Wii era, even the Wii though.
For the Switch specifically, yeah.
But I do just want to point out, like we dunk on the Wii U a lot, and it's well deserved for a lot of reasons. But like, looking at the Wii, man, there was some years that there was just nothing of consequence coming out. There's a lot of good, but like, there wasn't the big games we're talking about. And funnily enough, the Wii U, I would argue, has more amazing games than the Wii had. And the funniest thing there is we know that because we played them all on the Switch. It's like, it's just, they ported all, like, and they're so good. There are so many amazing Wii U games. Well, the problem is, though, there's not so many. Like, there's a pretty good amount of them. And then there was just nothing else. And I feel like you compare that to the Switch because it had those ports, because it had a lot of brand new games that were amazing and a lot of things fill in the gaps. Like, every year we had a major game come out. I think the one exception would be, and some years, instead of getting a major game, we got like a couple smaller games. Like, there was one year, I think it was 2019, we got Astral Chain and Luigi's Mansion 3 and Zelda Link's Awakening remake, which were all great games, but like, those aren't Mario Odyssey. You know what I mean? Like, those aren't like that. But that Nintendo just has that ability to have, like, instead of one giant, we're giving you three big guys. And then there was 2020 that was probably the worst year for Nintendo Switch titles, but it had Animal Crossing in March. So sure, it pretty much only had Paper Mario Origami King that was whatever in the summer. It had Animal Crossing. It didn't need anything else. And there was also a pandemic going on.
Sure. But I think, as well, because the reason why I asked, like, at least for the holidays, because we don't know what, like, if there is a Nintendo game coming out this holiday, right? Like, there's that sort of slot is kind of open right now. Like, that could potentially lead into like Metroid Prime 4, like right up to the end of the year, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the answer is yes. I think that there is a high likelihood that is going to happen. And I think the thing was, the holiday was going to be Switch too. And I believe that was Nintendo's plan, and I believe that might have changed. But again, I think that change is, if they're making it for a reason, and I would rather them get things right, because the moment Nintendo breaks its momentum, I think we're going to be in a potentially very scary place that I don't want to go back to, and I've been there many times before. But yeah, Metroid Prime 4, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out this fall. Having said that, if it didn't, I'd be like, I get it. Like, I think that this year God, I feel like such a spoiled brat saying this because I just reviewed Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and gave it a 5. I reviewed Prince of Persia Lost Crown a couple weeks ago, gave it a 5. And both those games are absolutely incredible and some of my all-time favorites. And 2024 is already off to a start that is rivaling 2023 in terms of quality games. And I'm not even talking about the games I'm not playing, like Helldivers that everyone in this office is obsessed with, and there's some card game everyone's talking about, Baldier or something like that. I don't know. Everyone, there's amazing games.
But it looks good.
Yeah, amazing games are happening right now. But it's like I'm looking at the rest of the year and I'm like, I think that Sony coming out and being like, hey, that we're not going to have any of those big ones, and Nintendo with where we're at here, if the Switch 2 doesn't happen, it's kind of all right, we're either getting Metroid Prime or we're not. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get much. The one thing that I feel is a surefire bet that we'll probably hear about next Tuesday, Pokemon Day, will be whatever this year's Pokemon game is, and that is sure to sell between 10 and 20 million copies, whatever it is, if it is in any of their verticals of mainline games.
I you know what, I'll admit I am a sort of a not necessarily a big sort of Pokemon fan. However, just within the past year, I finally got my hands on an analog pocket, and I've been really like I jumped into to Ruby Red, and I've been ooh, I really would love to be able to play like a decent one. And I know that last one obviously had its issues, so I would love to be able to hopefully make I don't know, I would love to be able to see like more like GBA remakes or GB like things on the NSO. Like that would be really cool to me to be able to play that on a Switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, I've said this countless times before, and I've been wrong every time, but it's getting to the point that I'm like, I'm going to have to be right at some point. I think that next Tuesday, as of February 22nd, 2024, right now, I think that we're going to get Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Ruby, Sapphire, Emeralds, and Fire Red, Leaf Green on Nintendo Switch Online next week. It might be part of the expansion pack. You might that'll be where the extra money comes in or whatever. Sure. But I think it is time, and I don't think they'll have other things to talk about, but and I imagine they will have a core game, whether it's a Let's Go game, a Legends game, or a Black and White remake in the style of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Fingers crossed it's not that. That's what I think that the big announcements from Pokemon Day are going to be finally the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games online, and here's whatever the new big one for the fall is.
Well, I will say, Tim, you're definitely more right than you are wrong. So I really hope that you I'm believing with you that we'll get all those by next week. But we'll learn more about that next week. But Tim, I want to thank you for joining me on this episode. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you and all the work that you're doing?
You can find me at Tim Gettys, Gettys, on all the social media platforms. But more importantly, you can find me at Kinda Funny. Every single day, we make fun videos here, hanging out with our friends, having a great time. And again, Steve, thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry if I talked way too much about this, but we don't have a Nintendo show at Kinda Funny. So
this any is why chance I get, you on.
yeah, it's any chance I get, I want to talk. And also, because of scheduling, I wasn't actually able to react to the Nintendo Direct or be on Games Daily that day. So this is my first time to really talk about it. So thank you for giving me that platform.
No, it is absolutely my pleasure. So thank you so much. And if you want to be able to check out more about what I do, you can be able to go to Steve Saylor pretty much everywhere on social media. But if you want to be able to support me financially, you can be able to go to patreon.com/Steve Saylor, and you'll be able to get a daily bonus show from me. But then you can also be able to check out patreon.com/kindafunny too. So make sure to go support both. All right. Thanks so much. See you all next week. As always, I remain obediently yours. Bye.